today I'm going to be showing you guys how I made these larger than life Yzma inspired ears. I made these for my friend Kat over at Perfectly Cat, and I'll have the video where she showed them off linked below. But let's go ahead and jump into this tutorial. So starting off, you are going to need some hair gel. I got this huge bottle from the Dollar Tree. You do not need high quality hair gel. I actually liked this one because it bubbles really good. I also picked up these little glass jars from Dollar Tree. Super excited that they had these, and they had them in a bunch of different sizes, but I only picked up this size. And then I also have this purple floral wire from Dollar Tree. All of these items I actually had in my craft room. They're just from Dollar Tree. I have not left my house during quarantine. This would not be considered essential. I will also be using part of a purple feather boa, and then this really, really large purple feather I picked up from the wedding section stuff at Hobby Lobby. So it's kind of in like the floral stuff, but obviously Hobby Lobbies are closed right now, so you might be able to order it online. Not sure. Now I will be using my ear spacing template and this large 4-inch diameter candle. I'm using kind of the same method at the beginning for these wire ears, but I did get a suggestion from a subscriber that I'm going to do for this ear tutorial that I like so much better. So first, you're going to start by taking your wire and just wrapping it around the candle to get a nice rounded shape, and then I'm actually going to bend my wire inward. So I used to glue it down on the sides of the ear, like glue the wire on the sides of the ear, but my subscriber suggested bending the wire inward and then gluing it underneath the ear, which is so smart because then you don't have to worry about covering it with flowers or anything like that. So I'm bending one ear and then kind of measuring out the center and then wrapping around the other side to make the second ear. This is a little bit of trial and error. Just be patient. One thing I love about this Dollar Tree wire is that it smooths out really, really nicely. And if you mess up, you can just start over and it's not a big deal. And the kinks are worked out pretty easily. So just be patient, especially if this is your first time doing wire ears. But I have found that using this ear spacing template helps so much because you have a reference point just to make sure that they are spaced nicely and staying kind of consistently sized. So once you have your shape kind of finalized, I'm going to just snip off the excess wire, and then again I'm bending it in toward the center of the ears, and that's how I'm going to glue it onto the headband. So now that I have this part cut out, I am going to go ahead and attach this to my headband. So I'm just kind of using the spacing template to finalize the shape. And then I'm going to grab my headband. I do have the link to the headbands that I like to use in the description box below. They're so comfortable and flexible. And I'm just going to use hot glue to attach this. So again, this takes some patience. I've done this a few times, so I'm kind of have it like where I can eyeball it a little bit as I'm going, but I would suggest printing out the spacing template because you can kind of use it to make sure that your ears are still lining up nicely and it didn't like shift one way or the other on the headband. So I'm going to start by doing what's called tacking, which is where you just put down some hot glue, let that dry in place. This is not enough hot glue to hold this really securely, but it just kind of gets them attached to the headband, and then I go back in and I reinforce it by encasing the wire in a butt ton of hot glue. So I just literally create like a glob of hot glue on top of the wire to make sure that it's nicely adhered. So now I'm going to try this part, which I have never done before, but I am just going to do the same thing, kind of put down a good amount of hot glue. I wish I had done a little bit, let it dry, and then added more because I did end up kind of burning my fingers a little bit. And then I continued on the other side. As you can see, I learned where to place my hands. The wire from Dollar Tree will heat up, so that's how I ended up burning myself a little, was because not because the glue touched me, but the glue heated up the wire. Anyway, these are the LEDs I'm going to be using. I'll have them linked in the description box below, but before we attach the LEDs, I am going to do the feather. So I tried to kind of wrap the wire that was attached to the feather around, and it ripped off the feather. So I hot glued it back in place, and then I am going to take some masking tape and wrap it around just to make sure that it's not budging, especially since I made these for someone else. I wanted to make sure the feather wasn't going to break off. So again, just using masking tape to wrap this around. I wish I had had like black tape of some kind, but I did not have that on hand, so I just made sure to cover this part up so that you can't see it once we get to the embellishment part of this. that I have that part fixed, I'm going to take this wire and wrap it around into kind of like a circular base because I needed something to add glue to. So originally I did just glue this down, but I didn't like how I felt like it was just going to fall off. So I do end up adding some felt. So I just cut out like a little rectangle of felt, and then I am gluing it to the base and wrapping it around. Using felt is a really good trick for when you need to hot glue something because it adheres to hot glue really, really well. So again, I'm just kind of creating a little base out of felt on the bottom of this feather to give me something a little bit more secure to glue down to the headband. Also, bright side, doing it this way, you are way less likely to burn yourself with hot glue. So now that we have our feather on, I was between lighting up the ears or doing something else, and I went with doing something else. So I'm gonna kind of pull some feathers out of this boa. It was just a little bit too poofy and it was covering up the ear shape. So I just kind of pulled some of the excess feathers out to slim it down. And now I'm going to go in with my lights. So I was going to originally make these just light up wire ears, but I thought it would be cool if the feathers actually lit up because, I mean, Yzma's pretty extra, y'all, so that reminded me a little bit more of Yzma. So I'm going to glue down my battery pack first. Make sure that you glue down the side that does not have the screws sticking up. That way if you need to change the batteries, you can. So you want to make sure that those screws are facing upward. That way you can kind of like move through the feathers and replace the batteries if you need to. Although I will say I have quite a few pairs of light up ears and I've never had to replace the batteries in any of them yet, so. Alright, so now I'm going to wrap the excess wire that does not have any lights around it and just kind of tack it down onto that middle feather. I just need them out of the way for this next part, so it doesn't need to be perfect. When you go in and add the feathers, it's actually going to cover it up anyway. So now we're going to do the feathers before actually making it light up. I don't know why I decided to do it this way, it just made more sense in my head. Maybe it would be easier to do the lights first, but I'm gonna do it this way because, yeah. So I started by gluing down one side of the feathers and then I actually laced them through the ear. So I like looped them around the ear by going through it and then looping. I hope I'm making sense. This is so hard to explain, but it's really not a complex idea. I'm basically just lacing the feathers in and out so that they're not just sitting on top, but they look more like they're a part of the headband. There we go. There's a good shot of what I'm doing. So once I have that down, I'm just going to go ahead and glue down the other end of the feather boa and make sure that everything's covered up. Now the good news about this is that if you've got a spot where you can see something that maybe you don't want to see, you can just like put down a little dot of hot glue and tap down the feathers and cover it up. I did go in and pull out a few extra feathers because, again, they're just kind of covering up the fact that these are Mickey ears and not just a feather boa headband. And then I'm going and tacking down some of the feathers to cover up the wires that we laid down. And now I'm going to go ahead and start doing the lights. So there's really no scientific method to doing these lights. I basically just went through and kind of like wrapped them through the feathers and made sure that they were lighting up the feathers and that you couldn't actually see the individual bulbs. But sometimes I would actually poke the wire through and like wrap it around the feathers a few times. This is honestly just kind of working with the wire, but as long as you are patient and not, like, you know, you've got some patience, then you'll be fine. It's not super time consuming, it's more so just making it look how you want it to look. then the few spots I had where the lights were just a little bit too intense, I went in and glued a little bit of those extra feathers down that I plucked out earlier to make it look more like the feathers are glowing and less like there's actual light bulbs underneath it. By the way, the lights are showing up super like hot spot on the camera, but they were a little bit more glowy in person. So this is what they looked like at this stage, and you could stop here or you could go the extra mile and do the next step along with me. So I wanted to add the little potion bottles, you know, the poison for Cusco's poison. So that's the next step I'm going to do after filling this in with a few more feathers, just to make sure that these look perfect for my friend Kat. So in order to make the quote-unquote poison, I am going to use this little Ziploc bag. I'm going to put the hair gel in here. I have done pastry frosting bags for this, but these are so much cheaper, so I would suggest a plastic bag. But I put a good amount of hair gel in there just because I have an entire bottle and it's $1. And then I'm adding a little bit of pink food coloring to this to give it the right color like it's in the movie. I ended up adding more hair gel just because I wanted it to be the same shade in the two bottles and I was so scared I would run out. But I had way more than I needed. So you do not need very much. I do like one little dot of food coloring because I actually made an ornament in this same method at Christmas time for Nicole, and I used 2 dots and it came out a little bit more red than I wanted it to. So if you're wanting that true pink color, then just do one teeny tiny dot of pink food coloring. Also, I was really glad that I used as much hair gel as I did because I think if I'd used less, it wouldn't have been the right color. So now that I have this all mixed, I just kind of, squished it with my hands. I'm going to use my scissors and I'm going to snip off the very end of this plastic bag after twisting it. And that's going to give me a little opening to squeeze it into this bottle, but it's kind of like creating a funnel. I would suggest pushing the bag down as far into the bottom of the bottle as you can, because this first one that I did, I had to kind of like jiggle the hair gel down to the bottom. But the second one I learned from my mistake and I pushed it down further into the bottle before squeezing it. That way all the hair gel started at the bottom and kind of built its way up. I'm making this sound so complicated, but y'all just like squeeze the hair gel into the bottle. Okay, so for the second one I am going to speed up how I did it just because you kind of saw me do it once. But again, for the second one I kind of shoved the bag a little bit further down there. And then if you're having trouble, by the way, like if the first time you do use the bag it kind of got messed up, I just kind of squeezed a little extra out and then twisted it back up again. And then that's that. So for the cork, I'm going to use E6000 to glue it in. I did try to put it originally around the jar, but it works a lot better if you put it around the cork itself. The jar is probably going to be a little bit wet just from the hair gel, so I would suggest putting glue on the cork. And if you're really nervous, you can actually do hot glue and E6000, but I didn't find that necessary. I just did the E6000 to hold it. And then I would let this dry overnight just to make sure that these corks are really securely in there. And then I just use this little poking tool that I have to wipe off any excess. So now that the little potion bottles are done, I am going to glue these in place. You could add labels onto these. I did do that when I made the little ornaments for my friend Nicole of this bottle, but the reason I didn't do it for the ears is because I don't really think you would have been able to see it with all the feathers and everything. I also liked that they weren't specifically labeled potion bottles because she has like that huge cabinet of them. I don't know, I thought it was cuter this way. So the first one I'm gluing down actually like right on top of the light pack, but I made sure that I could still access the little screws around it so that if Kat needs to change out the batteries, she can. And then the second bottle that I'm gonna glue down, you could always just do one bottle, by the way. I thought it looked cute just like this, but I wanted it to be symmetrical, so I did end up doing 2. On the second bottle that I glued down, I did have to spread the feathers out a little bit to reveal the headband underneath, because if you just try to glue down onto the feathers, it's not going to be securely attached. So make sure that you kind of can see the headband, add the glue to the headband, and then firmly press down the bottle into that spot. And that does it for this tutorial, guys. I hope you enjoyed this. I thought it was so much fun to make these ears. They're just so different and fun and festive, and being locked in the house right now and looking back at this video, it was just fun. So if you guys recreate this, tag me on Instagram. I love seeing when you guys recreate stuff from my channel. It makes me so happy. And Kat, if you're watching, I hope you enjoyed these ears. I loved making them for you. If you guys have any questions or anything, please leave them for me in the comments below. Most of this stuff was from Dollar Tree, so that was just kind of a nice little perk. But if you have any questions, as always, leave it for me below, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye.